So this episode was actually well written. You've got all the characters doing interesting things that are important to their story arcs, like actually shifting them into a new direction. Like, this is good. And they were also showing us stuff instead of just flat out telling us, which is kind of new, but they've been doing better in season 2 so far. Unfortunately, I just didn't care. And that's a result of getting a season and a half of characters doing busy work, stuff that made them unlikable, or things that just didn't make any logical sense. So what you're about to see is actually a compilation of 3 separate attempts on my part to record a review that wasn't just a summary of the events in this episode. I mean, I literally could not muster the enthusiasm to be excited about the things that they were doing right. Additionally, for those of you who've been keeping track, I accidentally deleted about 60% of my editing for this video, and I am not going back and redoing all of it. So about the first third to half of this review is gonna have more clips in it than the second half. I just wanna get through this and get it over with. So let's go. Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to that channel. We are looking at The Wheel of Time, Season 2, Episode 5. Its corresponding chapters, I'm not really sure, but most of it seems to come from The Great Hunt. Like, I can see that they've taken their inspiration from The Great Hunt. As far as Moiraine's stuff goes, I'm not really sure. I don't think it happens at all. I think it's just all show made up stuff. As far as the books go, I'm going to restart The Shadow Rising. I think I was close to a third of the way through back 4 months ago, but it's been so long and I thought, you know what, I should just reread it and get myself back on track. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the books. Sometimes I feel like the character arcs are not as distilled as I want, but this is a 14-book series and it is a continuous story. So I feel like I'm so far in the beginning of this journey for each of these characters, I won't be able to tell where they're going. I'm trying to take the hero's journey in my mind and see if I can see at what points in the novels I am on the hero's journey for each of these characters, just to see if I can gauge where they're going to go. But so far, I really have no idea, and I'm fascinated. Please excuse my voice and any sniffing you hear me do in this video. I have been really sick for the last 2 months. Like, as in about 50% of the time in the last 2 months, I've been really, really sick. And this last time was definitely the worst. But let's go. I'm going to just watch episode 5 again and comment as we go. No notes, just I'm literally just walking into this and responding as I view these scenes. But before we get into it, I want to say a big special thank you to my 6th ever My Precious tier patron, Charles Halverson. Charles, you've been so patient waiting for this thank you, and I want to make sure you know that I mean it wholeheartedly. Thank you so much. You've really stuck through it with me on this one, and I don't know what I've done to deserve such loyal patrons as you, but I'm gonna do my best to keep it up. You've brought me one big step closer to the dream life, the Hobbit life.
Quite content to ignore and be ignored by the world of the big folk.
Looking forward to seeing you around, Charles.
Let's get this show on the road!
Okay, we're in the court of High Lord Turok in Falm. These costumes look fantastic. They're super elaborate, not practical at all, so they must be entirely ceremonial. I mean, I can't imagine being comfortable wearing these outfits, really. And you definitely can't wipe your own butt. Which means they have royal butt wipers.
If you're lucky, you'll be given the honor of wiping the royal ass.
That was definitely a thing across cultures. It's gross. But High Lord Turok is ticked off at Lady Suroth because she went and took control of a village that is so far outside of where they are that they're like, we can't possibly hold on to it. And you defied us by going and doing this on your own. And at one point she says,
"Perhaps my lord made a mistake."
I do not make mistakes. I'm guided by the light. We have a mission, uniting all the people of the world under our Empress to fight the Shadow. A mission you have carelessly jeopardized by seizing a village too far beyond our current reach. A village we cannot hold.
I beg my lord's forgiveness.
That was obviously sarcasm.
They ban her from court until she's presentable and decide to measure this by cutting off her super long fingernails. So now at least she can wipe her own butt. But the main thing is she seems to be like,
oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me.
But at the same time, she was so arrogant and defiant. It was a little bit of a weird performance, but okay, I mean, these are just bad guys.
Mine is an evil laugh.
Oh, quit being so dramatic.
Now, this scene is actually doing a good job of telling us a lot without telling us. They're just showing us.
I can't actually believe I'm saying this.
For instance, the higher up you are, it seems like you don't speak for yourself. You have a sort of a herald type of character who speaks for you. These are all very interesting cultural things that are not told to us, except through how the situation is handled in the scene. So this is actually a mostly well done scene. Lady Sarath is dismissed, and for some reason, we've got Ishamael now speaking. He says, hey, High Lord Turok, I know that you're a collector of ancient things, so I have this gift for you. And he brings the box that has the Horn of Valir in it and gives it to High Lord Turok. Well, Padden Fane brings it. So Padden Fane has delivered the horn at this point. And we'll notice that High Lord Turok turns the dials in the ivory or whatever that's on this case for the horn, and it doesn't seem very complicated. And at a later point in season 2, we see that Ingtar and Loyal can't figure out how to open the box that has the horn in it, and they just sat there and watched this guy do it. I think I would be very curious about how to open the box and would remember him just turning these dials, but anyway, they open it a different way. It ends with High Lord Turok saying, with this, we will conquer the world, essentially.
So the first thing we got to do is beef up security around here.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's fine.
No, it's nothing. Like, we're doing good still. We're good. We're good. Yeah, don't worry about us.
This scene isn't something I recall being in the book, and I'm actually okay with it because I don't mind seeing from the bad guys' perspectives what they are doing to chase down the good guys or to get ahead of the good guys. This way we know they're making progress and we're looking at our good guys as they're doing stuff going like, dude, you're not going to be ready. Like, you have no idea what's about to come, but it's not good. It creates this sort of tension on the part of the reader or the viewer in this case. Okay, now we're in private with Lady Sarath and Ishamael later on, and she's like, why am I paying the price for the things that you want? You were the one who wanted to go to that other village and capture, the Shinarans and the wolf guy or whatever. And she very angrily says,
we should just kill Turok and be done with it.
Everything is about emotion with women.
So we see what their scheme is. Their scheme is that they're going to kill Turok in some way so that she can then take power. And in exchange for his assistance, she is going to be giving him her army and her leashed damane, whatever, you get the idea. That seems to be what the deal is, but she's upset that things aren't progressing faster. And Ishamael seems to have convinced her that he is loyal to the Empire, the Shan-Chan Empire, because he says, we can't just kill High Lord Turok, or it's going to plunge the Empire into civil war. So we kind of get an idea of what his scheme is, like how he's deceived her, like, I'm on your side, and she clearly sees herself as being above him. Like, this is actually well done telling without telling. They're showing us what the situation is here. I mean, he could have very easily just said, I'm, loyal to the Empire. We didn't need to do that. His expression of what he wanted, or what they both wanted supposedly, told us what he has convinced her of, which is, that he's loyal to the Empire and wants it to succeed. The only part of this conversation that I didn't quite like was when she says,
You may be chosen, but you are not of the blood. You are here at my invitation.
Oh my God! Whoa!
All right, dude, relax.
Whoa! We're trying to have a rational conversation.
We're trying to help our friend here.
And I know why you swore your oaths to the dark.
and that causes her to kind of like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, she's almost ashamed of it, or she feels like this huge amount of vulnerability to Ishamael. And the problem I have with this is when we get to the end of season 1, Lady Sarath is dead, and I'm not sure what the hell he was referring to at this point. Did she swear her oaths to the Dark One because she wanted to be in power? In which case, this is just a little bit clumsy placing of this line, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, we kind of get it. So I'm not going to complain a whole lot. But either way, she was ticked off, and now she's like,
oh no, forgive me. I forgot myself, my lord.
She didn't ask for forgiveness. But he takes her hand and assures her that the last battle is about to be fought right there in the city, and the dragon is going to join them, and it will be written across the sky. And then he says, I have another gift for you and it's on its way. And we find out later, of course, that is meant to be Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine, but it ends up being just Egwene.
Wow, what a downgrade.
Fast forwarding a bit, and we open up to Ishamael in bed with Rand, and he cuddles up to Rand, who is sleeping, and kind of caresses his face. And then he reveals, like, I know it's you, Selene, and Rand turns into Selene. So they're in the dream world, and I thought this actually did a pretty decent job of demonstrating what works in the dream world. Like, I was impressed that there was so much showing in this episode and not as much telling as there has been in past episodes. So Selene is waiting in this dream world for Rand to fall asleep, and then she's gonna get him. And she and Ishamael share a glass of wine, which in this dream world is like, you know, I guess it's not real, but it seems real. And they start reminiscing about the good old days and about how this world is like such a crap world. At least that's what Ishamael is saying.
Dear William.
To the future. After our great Lord's victory.
And this again is like subtly hinting at where their minds are. Like Selene basically wants the past back. She wants, you know, the guy she loved. She wants the dragon back, you know, as he was, and their relationship to re-ensue. But Ishamael's thinking about something going forward. And the only thing I didn't like is that he says, you know, to our great Lord's victory. And it seemed that in the book, it was that Ishamael started to believe himself to be the Dark Lord. I might be a little confused on this, but I was pretty sure that he had reached a state in his confinement of madness where he was starting to believe, like, I am the Dark Lord, or I am stepping up and I am doing this. And it seems now that he's expressing things in a way that seem like he is the agent of the Dark Lord. And I'm not sure that's totally in character with him from the book. And there would be consequences for changing that later on, I believe. But I don't know. I can't remember how this all pans out. Ishamael wants to know how Selene's cover was blown. And she says, well, Moiraine blew it for me. I wish you'd killed her. You know, why didn't you?
A dead Aes Sedai is useless.
And one without power isn't.
Desperation opens the mind to more interesting choices, as it did for you.
I'm not sure what he meant by the as it did for you, and I wonder if he's hinting at something that happened in between Selene and Rand in the past. I'm not really sure. Unless he's referring to Rand running away from the gang and then that allowed her to approach him, you know, on her own, like without anybody else being around there. I don't know. I have no idea what this refers to.
Aren't you worried I'll betray you?
Will you?
Obviously.
I like the idea that you've got two bad guys with their own agendas, but they both know that they can work together in some ways and it will help them get what they want. Like, I'm not 100% sure they're even working together so much as this is a conversation between two people who aren't going to try to interfere with each other just yet because they think that the other one is going to be useful. And again, I like this. I just don't have much to complain about.
It just feels so weird.
Then we get the revelation of what Ishamael's purpose is in all of this. So he says, do you know why the Dark One woke me up before anybody else? And he says, it's because alone among all of the chosen, I am the only one who truly believes in the dark. I believe that the only way to end all the suffering in the world is to stop the wheel itself. And she says,
so why release me?
Which makes me think that, okay, so her goal is not obliteration. It really is kind of just rule with the dragon. And he says, because I know what you want. I know what you've always wanted. And you see the figure of Rand laying in the bed and he sits up and looks at them. And Ishamael wants to know more about what is the dragon like, you know, in his new life. What is he like? I keep calling her Selene, but actually it's Lanfear. So Lanfear goes,
Rand is softer, takes no pride in his birthright and rejects his own power.
You will definitely dislike him, but you won't fear him because he's most likely a
Oh, right, not scary.
And what about the girls?
And then Ishamael gives kind of an update on the progress of everybody else. You know, that Nynaeve and Egwene are his now or very soon, whatever. And as for the boys, Matt was apparently born his, and Perrin is going to soon be more wolf than man. So, and Ishamael speculates, you know, what do you think Rand will do when he sees all of his friends lost? And Lanfear says he will break. It's not entirely clear from her expression how she feels about that. It's more like she's pondering what that could do for her. Like, okay, if he breaks, how would that help me? Or, you know, like, could this help me? I don't know. But this is all a good setup, actually, for going forward when you reveal what the plans or intentions of your bad guys are. Sort of like how I described the beginning of this season. It makes it feel like there's an impending doom anytime you're with the good guys. So like when you see the good guys doing stuff and things seem to be going right, in the back of your mind, you're going, yeah, but Ishamael and Lanfear are doing stuff because they have said that they're doing it, and we are watching the pieces all fall into place. So this is good. This is nice. I like it. And it was a proper execution of showing us instead of telling us, probably with the exception of like the last line or so, but that wasn't even bad. Like, I thought that was fine. Sometimes it's okay to actually just tell something. And in this case, it worked for me because I'm like, all right, we see what's going on. We see that you are hoping that Rand is going to be traumatized by all of his friends going off the deep ends in their various areas of the world at this moment. And then Ishamael is woken up by one of his servants, and so he's not in the dream world anymore.
I'm sorry I was sleeping.
Now back in Turok's court, it's nighttime, and we've got Turok kind of questioning Ishamael. It's a little unclear as to why he's questioning him right now as opposed to immediately after Lady Suroth was expelled from the court and he got the horn or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. It's fine. We can assume that he's, asked questions about Ishamael and whatnot. But anyway, he's asking Ishamael, like,
where are you from?
And Ishamael's like,
I don't even know.
Which I would have assumed is not acceptable. I am sort of wondering why Turok's herald isn't the one talking for him, but perhaps because it's not a formal proceeding. That's just something about their culture. I have no idea. Doesn't matter. Doesn't bother me. Don't care.
And it was you, was it not, who first saw the omens that led us to begin the return to our ancient homeland?
My lord, my eyes are too low to see such things. Only our Empress, in her court of the 9 moons, can see and know the omens for what they are.
So which kind of reveals that Ishamael actually somehow made it into the Empress's court first. And I'm wondering if this hints that High Lady Suroth is working like with the Empress in some way. I'm not sure. I really have no idea. None of this was in the book that I can recall. So if it was in there, I don't know. But High Lord Suroth is basically saying, like, this Horn of Valyr thing, it's pretty awesome. So you get a gift from me. Like, what would you like? And Ishamael basically says, I just want you to accept a gift from Lady Suroth. I suppose I could complain about how it seems like High Lord Turok was suspicious of Ishamael at first, but he seems to be appeased, his suspicions, that is, by Ishamael expressing a deference to the Empress, which I could see that being part of their culture, but it is something that's left so vague, unfortunately. Like, it's a very delicate balance between showing and telling too much or too little. And in this case, I felt like it was just so vague, it wasn't clear. But I seem to recall in the book that the Shan-Chan were very trusting once they felt like they were assured of somebody's like oaths, once they're like, okay, they've sworn the oaths, they're good. So something like this, I think, Ishamael saying like, I couldn't possibly read the omens, only the Empress could do that. That would be enough assurance for somebody like Turok, whatever, the guy. I'm mixing up Lady Suroth's name and High Lord Turok's name. Seems like that would be enough to kind of satisfy him, like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about this guy anymore. But if it wasn't, I would have been like, why weren't you investigating Ishamael more? You just asked him, where are you from? And he's like, well, I don't remember. And I'm like, okay. And then we have Lady Suroth comes in and brings Egwene, who has been captured, and says, My Soldam captured her, and she was a novice in the White Tower, and she's apparently the most powerful Aes Sedai like we've seen in, a very long time. She's obviously presenting her as a gift to High Lord Turok, and Turok is like, all right, call her, and so they call her Egwene. All of this is super interesting. The only complaint I have about this scene is that Loial is right there, and he should recognize Egwene. I was just expecting like a reaction shot or something, but maybe they thought that no one would notice that they were there. Like, they just like, let's not assume that they've been standing here all day long.
You know what I could use is a cup holder and a couple of Advil.
And that's all there is for Shamael in this episode. No further notes. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Even if it's just with an emoji, it's a free way to support the channel. Or if you're feeling super generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the Money Heart Thanks button down below. You can become a monthly patron, or just leave me a one-time tip. Now, let's get back to the show. Starting off with Rand and Moiraine. They are running through the forest to get away from Lanfear, who Moiraine just slit the throat of. And we've got Rand going like, if you've killed her, why are we running? And she says that wound will barely slow her down, which she kind of said in the last episode, but that's fine. We're starting a new episode. Then we've got Lanfear waking up and her neck healing, and she says, I didn't catch it really the first time, but she says, and we know she's talking about Moiraine. So we're establishing that Moiraine is a person she does not like at all. She has a lot of hatred towards her. And this actually pays off later on in the next episode. So this is actually a good thing to do. They're setting up that Lanfear has a particular character that she doesn't want, that she doesn't like, that she has an agenda against at this point. Maybe not an agenda, she's a grudge. Rand and Moiraine run into a stable, and there's 4 horses apparently, and the stable hand, and she shows her ring to the stable hand and says, I need your fastest horses right now, saddled and ready to go. I'm commandeering them in the name of the Emerald Seat and the White Tower. And the lady responds, the stable hand responds by like, I'm not just gonna give you my horses. And maybe this is just an area of the world that is so far removed from the White Tower and the influence of the Emerald Seat that this is the kind of response that you would get. However, in season 1, episode 1, we showed that even the people of the Two Rivers, who they don't even pay taxes to the Emerald Seat or any of those folks, they're like totally out there, they immediately were ready to serve Moiraine, recognizing her as an Aes Sedai. So this isn't really consistent, but again, like this is one of those little nitpicks that I would have told the writers, like you should fix this, have her immediately compliant, unless we want to show that this is an area that really nobody cares about the White Tower and the Aes Sedai. However, they're not that far from Cairhien, whatever. I don't know, just make her more compliant. Then Moiraine takes Rand's sword and kills the other horse, the remaining horse. Thankfully, the stable hand wasn't there to see this. I mean, I don't know how big this stable is, but she didn't notice Moiraine just slaughtering her other horse, whatever. Anyway, but yeah, in the books, especially in the first one, we saw that when Moiraine inconvenienced people or a town or people suffered because of the things that she was doing, she made sure that they got money for it, like that they were compensated in such a way that she maintained an amicable relationship with these folks. And yeah, I actually enjoy the way that Moiraine is behaving at this point, even though I do not like her as a character. This is a moment where her kind of behavior is like aggressive with purpose. Time is of the essence. They need to get away from Lanfear. So being forceful like this is actually a good thing in this situation. So she's not irritating me as much as she normally does, even though she's behaving in the same way that she has been up until now. The thing is, this is a truly desperate situation. So that is the difference. If you have Moiraine in desperate situations behaving like this, we can accept it and say, this is understandable and justifiable, and I agree with the character doing this and behaving this way. Like, she needs to get stuff done and go. But when things are not as dire, it's unnecessary and unacceptable and just very unlikable for that character. Moiraine, Rand, and the stable hand who Moiraine demands comes with them ride off, and shortly after they have left the stable, we see that Lanfear arrives, and she notices that
the one remaining horse is dead, and she's like, oh, very clever. And just at that moment, a man shows up on a horse and is like, oh my gosh, are you okay, my lady? And she's like, tell me, where does this road lead? And he says, oh, to Tar Valon, where the White Tower is. And she goes, of course it does. And, he's basically offering help to her, and she just obliterates his head. Like, it just becomes red mist. So I like this. Shows her brutality. She gets up onto the horse and is like, is there anything slower than a horse? Anybody who has read the books knows that there are much faster and more efficient ways of traveling than a horse. And Lanfear would probably have preferred to use those methods, but this is all she's got, so this is what she's taking. I love this sort of storytelling. I love that it is so urgent. We've got our two heroes who, Moiraine and Rand are on horseback running, and we've got someone who's very ruthless chasing behind them. And as we have seen in season 1, we know that Aes Sedai can actually rejuvenate the energy of their horses and keep them going longer, keep them awake and refreshed, even though once they remove that weave that gives them that strength, they could literally collapse and die. And of course, we do see Lanfear whipping her horse along with a whip made out of the One Power. Very cool, actually. I like that. I enjoy this. I want to see that our heroes are clever in how they get away. And she tears by, and we see that she has actually passed Moiraine and Rand, who were on foot in hiding in the bushes. And they come out, and Moraine's like, all right, if we're lucky, she won't discover the truth for a couple of days.
You assume too much.
Anyway, so then Rand wants to know what the hell's going on, and this is where she says,
you did not defeat the Dark One at the Eye of the World. You set his strongest lieutenant free, Ishamael, the leader of the Forsaken.
This, I believe, is the first time in the show that this information is actually being revealed.
Rand al'Thor, you released me at the Eye of the World. A lot of people call me Monster too, along with a litany of other unflattering names. Father of Lies, Betrayer of Hope, Forsaken. Do you know why they call me and the other Chosen such hideous things?
Ishamael, Father of Lies.
I'm sure that people who haven't read the book must be confused, unless I'm just not remembering a moment in the show when they talked about this. But was there a moment where it was explained that all of the Forsaken were sealed away, kind of like on top of the Dark One? At least that's the impression I get of what the situation is. And that before getting to the Dark One, you would probably get to the Forsaken. Because we didn't see any Forsaken at the Eye of the World, I feel like this might be very confusing to people. So I'm not sure what viewers who haven't read the book would be thinking at this point, but I might have told the writers, make sure that you explain what the situation was. But see, at this point, we've already had the reveal that Lanfear was one of the Forsaken and she's been set free. And I don't know. I think I'm just forgetting a moment where it was revealed that Ishamael is not the Dark One. I don't know. I don't care. I'm forgotten. And I'm not feeling 100%, so I don't really care to figure it out.
And now Ishamael is loose and he has released Lanfear. If he releases them all, well, then we have no hope of winning the last battle.
So this is a very good statement of the stakes. I want to see that we build up to not wanting to see the other Forsaken let go. And one of the best ways to do that is to show us just how incredibly powerful they are and what they're capable of, how traumatic it is to just have to encounter one of them. Lanfear catches up to the stable hand who has taken all 3 horses towards the White Tower. They're basically almost at Tar Valon at this point. I'm sort of confused as to why it would take maybe 2 days for Lanfear to figure out, when Moiraine said, it's going to take her maybe 2 days if we're lucky. Again, this isn't a well-executed scene. Lanfear asks the stable hand, where are the others? And the stable hand is like, they just told me to race to Tar Valon as fast as I could, and she starts indicating that, I knew this wasn't good for the horses, so of course I stopped and let the horses rest, which was, the fatal flaw in this plan is that there was no guarantee the stable hand was actually going to do what Moiraine said.
That wasn't very clever.
But Lanfear then asks whose idea was this, and the stable hand indicates that it was the woman's, it was the Aes Sedai's, and that the young man seemed to just be kind of in a daze. And we have an interesting reaction from Lanfear where she goes,
"Seemed to be off in a daze, only following them."
Of course he was. He's still so young. I must remember that.
It's almost like she was ready to be angry at Rand for this being his idea, or possibly that he was, partial to this plan and went with it. Instead, I think she's sort of putting it through her mind that, oh, he was just manipulated by Moiraine, and that's why he went along with this. And it's just like almost she's keeping that window open for forgiveness. So I like what they're doing with this little revelation of what the mentality of Lanfear is in this moment. This is all interesting stuff. I'm enjoying this. I have no complaints. This is all good, interesting stuff.
What's wrong with me?
So then Lanfear goes, oh, well, eventually they'll have to sleep, and that's when I'll get them. But yeah, the stable hand is like, oh, good, good for you, milady. Don't worry, I won't tell anybody. And then we get a little bit of sadism from Lanfear. She's like, I know you won't tell anybody. And she Agent Smiths the poor stable hand's mouth. Well, it's not quite that. It's not like we see the skin grow over her lips, but the stable hand's mouth is sewn closed, and that's how we're left. I mean, I hope that it's just gonna take a knife to cut that open, but I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Rand and Moiraine are back in Cairhien, and Rand is like, dude, she's gonna know we're here, but Moiraine is like, we need supplies and really fast horses that will ride for a few days, and that'll put some distance between us. And this is where Moiraine explains that they cannot sleep because Rand wants to sleep, but Moraine's like, we can't. That is when Lanfear is going to get us. Like, she was famous among the Forsaken for being able to go into people's dreams, to manipulate dreams, whatever, you get the idea. And Rand is like, can't you, prevent us from getting tired, like keep us awake and use the one power to do that? And Moiraine goes,
no.
You just need a little sprucing up, Timmy. A little fake it till you make it.
No, that is a terrible plan. How is that terrible? You'll be fine, bro. You're drinking Riot Punch, man.
If this was my script, I would have been like, okay, she should be looking for another Aes Sedai, like somebody who she trusts, that she can say, look, you need to rejuvenate me and him. Like, we cannot be sleepy. I don't know, like, what she's gonna do, not sleep. Like, you can't go for much longer than 2 or 3 nights without sleep. I've done 2 nights in a row without sleep, and it was not easy.
Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it.
I don't think this is going to work out.
Rand and Moiraine arrive back at her sister's house. Her sister is with her son, which is Moraine's nephew, and Moraine's nephew adores Moiraine. And I really enjoyed this encounter because for the first time in a long time, we see Moiraine seeming to be genuinely charming, or like that she has a love for this nephew, and it felt genuine. We could see that she had a soft spot for him. So I enjoyed this whole thing here. Basically, she shows up looking like a mess, and the sister is like, well, you look pretty bedraggled. I'm sure that you didn't come back here because you want to participate in, tasting wine for the wedding. And the nephew's like, oh, come on. I'm sure she didn't, she doesn't have time to do, frivolous things like this. And he wants to know who Rand is. And Moiraine is like, this is Rand, which I kind of liked that she couldn't think of a lie or some twisting of the truth. And this sort of shows a vulnerability around the nephew. I enjoy this. Not a whole lot is eventually done with it, though, which is unfortunate, because for me, just her interacting with the nephew made her so much more palatable on screen that I wanted more from this. I wanted more from Moiraine with the nephew.
Pleasure, Rand. I'm Barthanes Damadred, and this is my...
We've met.
I just really enjoy any time that Moiraine is clearly not in the know, or, I don't know. I just enjoyed that. But it was handled subtly, and that's good. Putting it too much in her face could be equally as obnoxious as her being a bitch to everybody. And so this was fine. I just liked that. I was like, there, see, your sister's way more on top of things than you even knew. Moiraine asks for couple of horses and changes of clothes and blah, 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 all that stuff. And the sister's very helpful. She's like, of course, we have some of the best horses. They were a gift from the queen. And the nephew starts talking about, and I'm going to be, getting married to the queen. Can you believe it? And he's like, which means I'm going to be your king. So I expect full subservience. I'm really enjoying this dynamic between the nephew and Moiraine. Moiraine is charmed by this rather than offended. And I mean, it's totally the intent of the situation, so.
It's a happy match, I hope.
The name Darmadred is held in high esteem. That is happiness enough.
Le who? The her.
Well,
the nephew has inserted this charm and this lightheartedness and this genuineness into this dynamic. It's very refreshing. For me, I was like, the nephew should be marrying Elaine. I mean, I know that he's bad in the end, but I still was like, this is such a pleasant addition to the dynamic. Again, it's a positive person in the scene. Somebody who seems good and charming and pleasant makes all of this so much more enjoyable to watch. And I'm not saying that, there always has to be somebody who's good and charming. I'm just saying that everybody else has been so miserable. It's nice to have a counterpoint, to have something that contrasts the doom and gloom of everybody else. Moiraine says she's going to go get washed up, and she asks if it's possible to get Rand fed and a change of clothes before they leave. And again, the nephew being so kind and obliging.
Yes, of course. I'll find him something fitting from my wardrobe.
Thank you.
Is that blood?
It truly has been good to see you, nephew. Oh, should I say my liege?
Oh, he's the Captain Obvious guy.
I just enjoy this. It's cute. It's a good little encounter. Next, we see Moiraine in her room or somewhere, and she starts giving herself I was going to say sponge bath, but it's like a rag bath, either way. And the sister comes in, and she's like, I'm sure that if I asked you, you still wouldn't tell me how you and Rand got in this state. And then Moraine's like, I'm surprised you're not, trying to pry this information out of Rand instead of me. And the sister says, yeah, well, Barthanes urged me not to, just to leave it alone. And Moiraine is like, yeah, he was always a kind little kid. And the sister's like, yeah, he's more like our dad, than either of us ever turned out to be.
Some people are in for a surprise.
This is a good way to reinforce for the audience who doesn't know what's coming that, this is a good person. Both of these women are fooled by this kid. Like, he seems... Well, I guess he's not a kid. He's a kid to me, but he's somebody who they trust and who they see as always having been kind, like their father. But of course, remember, their father plunged them into scandal in some way. So, subtle foreshadowing, maybe? It's just a kind of a sweet, sisterly sort of a moment here. I thought that what they were doing with this is showing that Moiraine has now kind of changed in her regard for her sister since that sit down and talk with a sister, like, hey, all of your connections are mine now. I thought that their relationship had been somewhat healed, or, because Moiraine basically got slapped in the face like she deserved to be. But eventually we find out that's not the case.
You never learn, do you?
And the sister continues saying that, I know you'd never tell me what's going on with you and the boy, why you're really here, whatever. She's like, but I know you, and you've always known precisely what you wanted. But I'm looking at you now, and I don't think you have any idea of what you want to do next.
That is accurate. Yes, that is accurate, yeah.
Fake it till you make it. It doesn't exactly make sense that suddenly they would be all, more soft with each other, but I think that they were using the nephew as sort of the catalyst for this. And that works. That actually works. That the two of them both love, I think his name is Barthanes. I might be getting his name wrong, but that they both love the nephew, and he is this soft, kind person, and that he creates this openness and softness between even the two of them. Moiraine opens up and says,
Rand needs protection, and I'm not sure I can provide that protection. And you and my nephew, which is your son, and this whole city might be caught in the crossfire if I make the wrong move. You should not have come here. I know.
I actually think this is all supposed to be genuine. Like, Moiraine is actually being honest and open here, which I, again, like. This is like the sort of thing that would happen around your family. You would fall back into old patterns. She was probably very close with her sister and would have been open like this. Then when she became an Aes Sedai, everything changed. But then the sister, you can see, has compassion suddenly for Moiraine.
When I was a little girl, I got an excellent piece of advice once from my very smart, much older sister.
It's not an insult, though, is it? It's a compliment, if anything.
She told me that if something is upsetting you or making you afraid, you ask yourself, can you know beyond any doubt that it's true?
Uh-huh.
Can you know beyond any doubt that Rand needs your protection? It was excellent advice, wasn't it? I've used it often in the last 40 years.
I'm so clever, I amaze myself.
I do kind of wonder, like, if Moiraine is so thoughtful and so strategic and she's always making it's almost like the plans within plans. Why was it that her much younger sister was the one who thought this up? I do feel like Moiraine should have been the more clever one, but it's okay. This is literally me just trying to find something to complain about. The sister says, no matter what danger you've unleashed or encouraged, whatever, it means the world to Barthanes that you're here, even if you can't stay. You can really see that the two sisters are having a sister moment here. This is good. This is like so refreshing from everything else that we've had from Moiraine that I literally have no complaints. I have none. I mean, if there's things that people were upset about, it doesn't match the books. I mean, I thought this whole thing was invented anyway. I guess that's the one thing I can complain about. But as far as Moraine's character being represented in the show is concerned, this has finally given her a moment of likability. And whether or not it's accurate to the books, I appreciate it a lot.
In the next scene, Rand is playing cards with the nephew, and the nephew's like, you sure you don't want some sleep? And Rand is about to answer, but Moiraine comes in, and I love the top that she has. Like, it looks like it's made out of like these ribbons that are sort of woven together. Like, what an interesting idea for a top. I actually really like this. But Rand goes,
time to go? Actually, no.
They go up into Rand's room or Moraine's room. I think it's Moraine's room. Doesn't matter. Either way, they're in a room with a bed, and he's like, you said I'm not supposed to go to sleep or she'll find me. And Moraine's like, yeah, she will. And he goes, so you want her to find me? And she goes, you know what? You were with her for 2 or 3 months before I found you, and she didn't hurt you. So what does she want? Rand is like, I don't know, but if you'd asked me a couple days ago, I'd have said she wanted me, like that she loved me. And Moiraine explains that, we don't really know a whole lot about Lanfear because all of the records of the old days or whatever have been lost. She's like, but what we do know, all the stories seem to agree that she loved the dragon and he loved her before he met his wife, but Lanfear was a dark friend. And Moiraine explains only after he broke her heart. So I'm guessing he dumped her and then she got pissed and went and made a deal with the devil.
That always works.
Rand picks up on that Moiraine wants him to pretend he's in love with Lanfear, and she's like, look, she's working with Ishamael. This could be like our only chance to figure out what it is that he wants.
Oh yeah, this ought to do it. Yeah, okay, so what's the next step? There is no next step. This is it. This is it? Yeah. This is your plan? It's awesome. This isn't gonna do shit.
She'll see right through.
Maybe she might.
I don't know. But whatever she is, I don't think everything between us was a lie.
It's your choice, Rand. I mean that this time. If it seems as if she's hurting you, I'll wake you.
And if you fall asleep, you're exhausted.
I don't have that option.
Well, if shit happens, I'm going directly to plan B.
But what choice does he have? Like, he has to sleep at some point, and she has no alternative. Like, this would be a choice, I guess, if she was like, or we could drive to the next town, or ride to the next town, and find another Aes Sedai to rejuvenate you, and you just never sleep. Like, it's still not much of a choice. Whatever, okay, so he lays down and closes his eyes, and then we see him go straight into the dream world. And he is bound to a wheel in the middle of the desert, and Lanfear is on a sort of concrete throne wearing her BDSM gear. I guess this is what Lanfear remembers turned him on in the past. But okay, So we're left with him on his mission to manipulate Lanfear into believing that he, has feelings for her and try to figure out what's going on between her and Ishamael. Like, what is their plan or what is his plan? In the book, they didn't even know that it was Ishamael that they were facing. It was kind of theorized at the end of book 3 that maybe this was Ishamael that we were dealing with all this time, but whatever. I have no idea. No comment. It's so different. It's like, how do you compare this to what happened in the books? I don't really know. It's interesting. It's exciting. I like that he's trying to manipulate Lanfear, and I have no idea if that's what happens in future books. Like, I haven't gotten through book 4 yet, so maybe it happens there. I don't know. But this is an interesting scenario, like trying to manipulate the other person while she's trying to manipulate him. But what makes it interesting is what they do. What actions do they take with each other? I wasn't exactly thrilled with what they do end up doing with each other, but okay. I wasn't sure where to stick this timeline, but Verin has a little thing going on in this episode as well. She shows up at the White Tower, and there's 2 other Brown Aja sisters there because she's Brown Aja. And she brings them some wine, and she's like, hey, I'm just here to, use the Great Library for my research. And then, I also want to catch up on the gossip. And she goes, I hear that we have some new and very powerful novices or whatever. And so we know she's there to learn about that. I don't know what it was exactly about this scene that just felt awkward. I think that there was too much of a pause between lines for some of these ladies, and some of their lines were very long and elaborate.
Can't a retiree pop in without an ulterior motive? I come seeking knowledge from our great library and the company of my sisters of the Brown Aja. Adelia says I'm not to return without gossip in exchange for her heady brew. Heartening to see the dust on that switch, sister. Suffice to say, my backside still recalls Sir Sedai's heavy-handed punishment centuries after the fact.
Then Verin shows up in the Mistress of Novices office and is like, I was hoping while I was here to, talk to Egwene and Nynaeve, but I can't find them. And the Mistress of Novices is like, oh, they're probably doing their chores or something. And she's like, they're not. They're not doing their chores, and they're not in their classes. And also the daughter heir is missing. Is it possible that they left the tower? And the Mistress of Novices is like, and she, flips through her book, and she's like, oh yes, they were signed out a couple of days ago. They've gone off to the daughter heir's homeland, Camelin.
The 3 were signed out just the other day.
That seems worth remembering.
I don't know how it slipped my mind, frankly.
It's quite unusual.
That it is.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Again, this scene felt kind of stiff and awkward. I don't feel like either of these ladies are doing like a bad job at acting, but there's something off in the timing. I wish I could figure it out, but I don't care enough to like study it and think about it more. But either way, it just felt awkward. And I know that it's supposed to be like the Aes Sedai are constantly playing each other, but if they were good at it, it wouldn't feel that way. It would feel more natural. But anyway, so she seems to be assured that, well, looks like they left with a bunch of soldiers from Camelin also. So I'm sure that as soon as they get to Camelin, we'll get word that they arrived there and it'll be fine. And Verin's like, oh, okay, sure. I've got another question for you. Do you have that book I lent you or whatever? Or that you have something. She has a book from the library, and she's like, oh yeah, it's in my quarters. Let's go get it. So they leave. And that's when one of the gals that Verin was talking to earlier sneaks into the Mistress of Novices room or office to sift through the book. And she sees something that surprises her. And I am really curious to see how Verin convinced this gal to sneak in and look at this stuff. Like, why? How would she know to go and look at this? I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then we get this Aes Sedai lady and Verin sitting on a couch, and the Aes Sedai gal goes,
now this is where my eidetic memory comes in handy. On the 72nd page is the notation about the 3 girls' departure. But the interesting thing is that there's a slight tremor in the notation.
Show me.
See, this is Shiriam's usual writing, but here it looks as if her hand was moving more slowly.
I'm not sure an eidetic memory works this way. Yes, remembering things like a photographic memory, but I don't know about replicating handwriting.
Or perhaps it was someone trying to mimic her handwriting.
No, Shiriam remembered making the notation herself. Do you think it might look like this if a weave of compulsion was being used?
Inconceivable!
The other Aes Sedai brings up something that I don't think has been brought up in the show so far yet, and that would be that somebody had broken one of the 3 oaths because they had used the one power against a fellow sister. And this is evidence of somebody who has become a Black Aja, or someone who is of the Black Aja. The Black Aja, as explained in the books, at least I think it's actually in book 3 where it's more explained than in book 2. Essentially, that there are some Aja who have sworn themselves to the dark, and they don't have to follow the 3 oaths. At least I think that's what it is. It hasn't really, I don't know if it's been totally clarified that that's the deal, but it seems like that's what it is, that if they've sworn themselves to the Dark One, it breaks their promise or their oaths, and now they can do whatever they want with the one power. And Verin turns to her and is like, we gotta find the names of every Aes Sedai that has left the tower in the last few days. And so that's what we know they're going off to do. The conclusion to Verin's little arc is she comes across Liandrin, who has just come back from basically taking Elaine and Egwene and Nynaeve off to the Shan-Chan. And, I was like, oh, I thought you were going to be out of town, at this one other town. And she's like, oh yeah, I did go there, but it wasn't a big deal. There wasn't any kid who can channel or whatever.
But I did bring back some white asparagus, if you'd like some.
It's a delicacy from the village. You can only procure them there and only at this time of year.
Yes.
So we get from that Liandrin has taken care of her alibi, essentially. Like, she'll always just be able to say, well, obviously I was where I said I was because I have these asparagus, which you can only get over at that town and only at this time of year. So where else do you think I was? But yeah, so Liandrin wants to know why Verin is there, and Verin's like, oh, I was really hoping I could talk to Nynaeve and Egwene. Lorraine's like, oh yeah, they're extraordinary, and and so Verin's like, yeah, I'd love to talk to them, but they're not here.
That's strange. Novices shouldn't be allowed to.
They've gone to a name day ceremony in Camelin.
I'd heard on the road back that a royal envoy going to Camelin was attacked south of here.
By whom?
A soldier at the inn. He said it was bandits or white cloaks, but if the girls were with them, come, we must talk to the keeper immediately. Those girls are worth more than gold itself. Hurry!
Communicating to the audience that Verin knows what's up, it's very clear. However, for what's taking place in the scene, I'm not 100% sure it makes sense. Like, Liandrin just said, they're not, like, we gotta hurry, this is important. And what Verin just, I'm not going with you, doesn't even say I'm not going with you. I think I would have just added a line there, like, you go there, I'll go look somewhere else, or I'll go and ask somebody something, or I don't know, something. And then we could see her just stand there watching Liandrin go off. Whatever. Moving on to Perrin. So Perrin is still walking and talking with Elias.
Do you guys ever get anything done, or do you just stand around and talk all day? We don't get paid enough to do stuff.
He's asking him about, like, are my eyes going to change too? And Elias is like, oh yeah, they'll change, and they're better than human eyes. And eventually Perrin asks, there's got to be something about civilization that you miss. And Elias is like, I miss beer. And Perrin's like, well, it's not much fun drinking alone. And that's when Elias goes like, well, you're never alone now, and hinting at the fact that Perrin's always going to have this sort of telepathic sort of connection with the wolves. Except I'm not really sure that the show has made it clear that there's this telepathic connection, like there's communication going on. Like, he saw the apparition of the deer go by earlier, but at this point in the book, we understand that Perrin can actually kind of hear the thoughts, like share the thoughts with the wolves. And that I just don't think is clear from this show. So I don't know if they're going to introduce that later as like, that's also something that you can do, or if we're going to continue to just only see these visions. I don't know. I just don't know. But so Perrin goes and looks over the hill that they have stopped at and realizes that they didn't continue following the caravan as Elias had said that they were, and instead they've gone back to Atuan's Mill, or Atuan's Mill, whatever, it doesn't matter. The place where the Shienarans were captured in the first place.
That's where we were when those soldiers came. We're not following the caravan. We're going the opposite way. You lied to me.
Better than being dead or a slave.
Oh, like my friends.
They're not your pack. Neither are the humans from the Two Rivers. Neither was your wife.
And Perrin gets super ticked off here and goes, oh no, you don't know anything about my pack. And all of Elias's little wolf buddies come up to him and they're staring at Perrin growling, and Perrin's like, okay, I'm outnumbered. And he goes, I'm off to find my friends. And Elias is like, you can't run from what you are, boy. Whatever. Perrin leaves. So he's walking off, and the little wolf hopper comes up behind him and seems to want him to stop. And he's like, no, we're not going back. Then he starts sniffing.
You smell it? Do you smell it? Stink.
Is he supposed to be smelling the rotten bodies? I'm not really sure. But then the wolf gives him a vision of Uno's body in a cage, and Perrin looks at it and he's like horrified, and he goes, oh my gosh, they didn't even bury him. And like, this is what he wants to do, is go back and bury Uno, who's dead, while his friends are in the hands of the Shan Chan, who have slaves, and possibly they're being tortured to death, who knows. Like, this isn't very thoughtful on Perrin's part. I'm not sure how I would have rewritten this. Maybe I would have had Perrin go into town to like get a horse or something. Like, I'm going to steal a horse. And while he's there, that's when he notices the people in the cages, and he goes and he sees that there's this woman in one of them. But this does seem to be from book 3. So while the hunting group is looking for Rand. So Rand has run off on his own, kind of like overwhelmed at being, the dragon. And Matt and Perrin, is Matt with them? I can't remember if Matt's with them at that point. It doesn't matter. Okay. But Perrin is part of the group that is looking for Rand. And they come across this town where an Aiel man has been captured. And Perrin lets the Aiel man go. And he eventually finds out that the Aiel are here. Like, there's a bunch of them that are here, not off in the waste, and they're looking for he who comes with the dawn, which is like their prophet. It's essentially the dragon. And Avienda is a character, but she's not here at this point, nor is she just with Perrin. Like, I don't know where we're going with this. They've just decided to combine these characters so that we don't have some rando Aielman, which I don't know if he's important later on. I guess we've missed the introduction for him, but they put Avienda here. So Perrin sneaks back into the town, and he's surprised to come across like all these cages that are hanging. In one of them is a Shan Chan soldier, but he's like, okay, whatever. And then he goes over and grabs a hammer, and he's going to break Uno's body out like nobody would hear. And of course the Aiel girl is like, somebody's gonna hear you. So then this guy approaches and is like, dude, don't get too close to her. The last one who did had his arm almost ripped off out of his socket or whatever. And Perrin asks, like, what did the Shan Chan put her in there? And the guy is like, oh, so you know about the Shan Chan. And he's like, well, hey, look, we got to go to the inn because there's a curfew. So he starts leading him over towards the inn, and they sit down at the table and they're having a talk. I do think it's pretty funny that this guy notices Perrin's wedding ring and says, that looks like Two Rivers work. Like, I was really under the impression that the Two Rivers are a very isolated, super far away from like all of civilization. Like they've never seen the White Cloaks before. So how is their stuff recognized everywhere? I'm just a little lost on that.
What did she do, the Aiel woman?
She wandered into the wrong town at the wrong time. Don't try to help her, Two Rivers. She's past that now. You understand me?
I'm sort of annoyed that Perrin had asked these questions. Like, what about these visitors? Like, he wants to know about the Shan Chan, like what the hell happened? And he's not getting any answers. The barkeep's dog comes out and like wants to do a handshake with Perrin, but anyway, at that moment, Perrin overhears that there's some White Cloaks over in the town, and they're like doing checks and heading this way. And then he notices that the guy he's talking to has white underneath his brown robe. So he's like, he's a White Cloak too, even though he was just getting along with him really well, but he realizes I can't trust this guy. But yeah, so the guy is named Child Bornhold, and this is a bigger character in the books. And he essentially just nice, is like, hey, just, you should probably go home. Like, I hope you find your way home. Like, don't get involved in any of the stuff here.
Getting bored.
Perrin goes off with the barkeep to be seen to his room, and Perrin asks what happened to the gal who owned the inn before, because now it's got a new owner, and the new innkeeper is like, she went off to follow the caravan because they took her daughter. They changed ownership really fast. At least it only feels like it's been a couple days, like maybe 2 days, maybe 3. And the innkeeper explains that the White Cloaks pushed the Shan-Chan out a few days prior, and that they felt like they were better off when the Shan-Chan were there. Because basically the Shan-Chan just leave you alone after you've sworn the oaths. Like, you swear the oaths and you're good. They just like, okay. But the innkeeper is creeped out by the questioners in the White Cloaks, and then you hear Child Valdar's voice outside. Now, I thought this guy was dead, so he's still alive. But so Child Valdar comes to essentially scold Dane Bornhald, which makes us like him more, because any enemy of Child Valdar is somebody who we're gonna be like, oh, he's probably on our side then, because Child Valdar is clearly psychotic and evil.
She was to be given nothing, Child Bornhold.
It took 11 of your questioners to take her spears and another 5 to cage her. She'll take double that number before she submits to any of your questions.
You think it's a coincidence that we find Aiel this far west of the Spine? At the same time, these strangers invade from the sea. The more questions I ask, the more answers I get. The strangers have established a base in Farm. It's there that we will push them back into the sea. Who's there?
Don't worry, Valda. No wolves here.
This is kind of clunky dialogue, and it's done to get information to the audience. Like, that's the whole reason they're having this conversation and why we're overhearing it, because we never got Perrin's answers to his question. I don't know. It feels smooth when you listen to it, but when you listen to just this chunk by itself, it seems very obvious to me that that's what it's for. That's fine, like getting information out like that, but I don't know. I was a little like, okay, whatever. The innkeeper's dog comes out and starts barking, and it freaks out Child Valdar, and Child Bornhald is like, haha, don't worry, there's no wolves around here. And then that's when Child Valdar is like, dude, your dad's not always going to be around to protect you, Dane Bornhald, and then he walks off. And Perrin gets from this that he knows where they're supposed to go. And the audience gets that this is Dane Bornhald, who is a major character in the story going forward. At least I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is. At the very least, you can tell because they've picked an attractive young actor to play this role, So later that night, Perrin is sneaking out, and he's walking past the cages, and he has a pang of guilt, and he goes back and he lets the girl out of the cage.
One wetlander puts me in a cage. Another takes me out. Why do you help me?
People shouldn't be in cages.
My name is Avienda, of the 9 Valleys Sept of the Ta'adat Aiel. Father Ismai, my water is yours.
Listen, Agape!
I can only think that Robert Jordan was heavily influenced by Dune and the Fremen, because a lot of the reverence for water seems to be, it's very similar. And I'm not saying like he ripped it off. It's just, it was an obvious concept for a world where there hardly is any water, that it would be of extremely high value to the point that it's almost revered, and that it's in their language, like their colloquialisms involve water. You know, my water is yours. Like I am loyal to you now. Basically, I belong to you because you set me free. So that's what she says. They're sneaking away, and Dane Bornhald, his voice comes out. He's like, hey, dude, I told you not to, mess with her. I warned you. And they've surrounded. A bunch of White Cloaks have surrounded Perrin and Avienda.
Looks like it's your lucky day, mate. Oh, thank God.
There's going to be a fight. There's going to be a fight.
And Dane goes, okay, everybody, attack all at once. Because if you go after her one at a time, you're screwed. It seems a little odd to me that they waited until she was out of the cage to pounce, but okay, whatever. But so he says to wait for his signal, and we see his hand is up, ready to go. Perrin starts shielding Avienda, but they have their back 4 feet away from the other White Cloak behind them. Avienda laughs at Perrin and puts her scarf up just as the Aiel would right before they're about to pounce on somebody. She's like, so tell me, Perrin, do you like to dance? And then Dane Bornhald gives the signal, and all the White Cloaks attack, except that it doesn't look like they're all attacking at once. It looks like 2 or 3 of them are attacking at a time, which if there's 2 people they're attacking, that means at least 1 or 2 are going for Avienda, or maybe all 3, but somebody's going to Perrin. So she doesn't have 11 guys jumping on her. She's got 1 or 2. it doesn't feel like the White Cloaks followed their instructions very closely. So Aviendha proceeds to kick everybody's asses. We do see that Perrin gets a hold of a long-handled hammer, the same one I think he was going to use to try to get Uno out of his cage. But anyway, so he's using that. They're fighting. She's taking out like all the guys, and he's taking out like one or two. Dane Bornhold is hanging back, kind of waiting for all the other guys. But Perrin and Aviendha are just, they're totally kicking ass. I did enjoy the choreography for this fight. Like, you could see this would be a believable, like, ferocious fighter. She's moving around a lot. However, it still wasn't really believable to me that she's taking out a whole bunch of guys, but it makes for good TV. So I was entertained. She was doing interesting things. It was a bit dark to see, but I could see enough that I'm like, oh, that's cool. She did, this thing, or, the leg swipe. She took out every guy in a unique way. So it was always interesting to watch. And then when Dane Bornhold jumps in, he's actually doing really well, just one-on-one with her, while Perrin is busy taking out some guy who's over on the ground. But Aviendha does eventually disarm Dane. It's a big old axe, and she's about to chop off his head, but Perrin's like, dude, wait! And she stops before she kills him. And Perrin reminds her, like, remember, he helped us. He gave you water. Well, he helped you. So Aviendha puts down the axe, and Dane Bornhold notices Perrin's eyes and like, what are you? So he noticed that there was some sort of a weird thing going on with him. But Perrin and Aviendha run away. Next we see Perrin and Aviendha have made camp, and they're eating some food, and
I thought your people never left the West.
Wetlanders call it the West. It is the threefold land, a shaping stone to make us, a testing ground to prove our worth, and a punishment for the sin.
What sin?
Nobody remembers, it was so long ago.
It's a little silly. I don't know if that's how it is in the book, but it just came out as a little corny in the show. So I don't know if that was the show's fault, or if it's just the idea of we're paying for the sin, but they have no idea what the sin is. I feel like somebody would have passed down like something. They would have said like, oh, it was, we ate the forbidden fruit. I don't know. But so she explains that she's looking for the chief of chiefs of the Aiel, and Perrin asks, so where are you going? And she's like, I'm going wherever you're going. And he's like, huh?
What you just said.
I have To. Gieto is the Aiel way. You saved my life. My water is yours.
Don't know about that.
It is not a lover, Wetlander. Though I would not be opposed.
And she asks, so where are we going? Like, you're the one deciding. And he's like, well, we're going to Falm. We're going to go and get the Shinarans, obviously. There's only one real major problem that I have with this, and that is that I think there's supposed to be like some love tension between Aviendha and Perrin in the show, and I don't think that exists in the books. Like, Perrin's supposed to fall in love with somebody else. And so I don't know if they're combining Aviendha with that other character whose name means falcon. I can't remember what the hell her name is. But I don't know if that's what that is, or if this is going to be like a distraction from the character who shows up later. The only reason I can think that they would have this happen is that they want some tension to be continued between Perrin and Rand. Because remember, they were butting heads before because Rand was jealous of Perrin because Egwene liked Perrin, whatever. It wasn't real, but it was, in his head. And so I think they're like, oh, now we're going to reverse it. We're going to have it so Aviendha is drawn to Rand because she's supposed to protect him. I think, at least that's what it seems like in the book so far. I'm not that far. And then we can have their roles reversed where Perrin is now like jealous of Rand. I have no idea what they're doing with this. I think if this was my script, I would have had Perrin look down at his wedding ring again, because that was a moment for Perrin in the first episode where we were kind of, I thought, establishing what his internal conflict was going to be for this season. And it seemed to be letting go of his wife because he wasn't ready to do that. He put the ring on the little floaty and was going to send it out, but then at the last second he's like, no, and he put the ring back on, which to me symbolizes that he's not ready to let go of his wife. And this is the first opportunity that we have to bring up that internal conflict, but I don't see it anywhere. I don't see evidence of it. He seems awkward around this woman, but it doesn't feel like he's conflicted about being drawn to her, if he is drawn to her. I'm not even sure if he's supposed to be at this point, but it seems like they're setting it up that way. And this would have just been a good time to have him like quickly, fidget with his ring or something. Anyway, And that's all we've got for Perrin in this episode. It wasn't a whole lot, but at least it was something interesting. Like, he did something. He actually went and set somebody free. But yeah, now it's back to walking and talking with this Aiel gal.
Oh man, this sucks!
On to the final storyline for this episode, which is Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine, and Liandrin. So Liandrin has brought the girls unconscious into the ways, and they brought horses. Whatever, it's okay. We are forgetting everything that happened in season 1. So I was asked during my first live stream, how would I fix season 3? And my response was that I would do what they did at the beginning of season 2. I would just pretend that season 1 and 2 never happened, and I would start writing season 3 from where I wanted the story to start. And I would try to undo a lot of the things that had happened before and imply that different things had happened. Like, at a certain point, I have no clue how they're going to take this story to the next bit. But that's the problem with changing a bunch of stuff at the beginning of a story. Like, the earlier the changes you make are, the bigger the consequences are going to be later. Like, the further away you get, the wider the difference is. Like, it's even harder to get the train back on the right track. But anyway. So horses are okay in the ways now. They're not going to die or panic. And somehow Liandrin has shielded the girls, because she says you're shielded, like they can't access the one power. But Machin Shin isn't drawn to this. I don't know if it's like she shielded them and then tied it off. Like, does she have to hold the shield? I thought that's how it works. Like, you would have to hold the shield, which would mean that she's channeling right now, which would mean Machin Shin should be drawn to them. I'm not sure what's going on here. And do I even remember how this happened in the book? I don't. And it's been a while since I've read this one, so moving on. So Nynaeve wants to know, how did you attack us with the one power? You've broken the 3 oaths. And Liandrin goes, I've broken many more than that. It doesn't exactly match because there's only 3 oaths that I know of. Are there like 12, but they talk about the 3 main? I have no idea. But we get it. She's done a lot of bad things, not just that.
Do you know why the Aes Sedai swear the 3 oaths in the first place? 1,000 years ago, a great king threatened to burn the tower unless we bound ourselves with the oaths. Our power didn't frighten him as much as our humanity. That's why the White Tower has so many rules and rituals and formalities. If we look inhuman and predictable, like the tides, men won't measure themselves against us. They have to tear us down.
And at this point, Nynaeve has figured it out that Liandrin is a bad guy, and she's like, you weren't recruiting me for the Red Aja, were you? You were recruiting me for the Dark One. Liandrin's like, dude, it would be just easier for you if you joined the Dark One. Like, just do it. And Nynaeve is like, no. She says she'd rather die. And Liandrin goes, every woman has her price. A burden she can no longer carry. A hope for a future that's impossible in this world. And Nynaeve figures out she's doing this for her son in some way. Like, that's her motivation here. Which I do like how this ties back to, you have to find what keeps you here. Like, what is the thing that keeps you at the tower? Where, Nynaeve was having difficulty figuring out what that is. And then she went and talked to Liandrin, and Liandrin is like, you find one thing to cling to. And then when it disappears and moves on, you find another thing to cling to. So in this case, it's Liandrin's son. So this is the thing that's motivating Liandrin, which makes what happens to Liandrin in the next, I think it's the next episode or the episode after that, whatever happens to Liandrin going forward, the thing that happens, it makes me wonder what the plan in the show is for Liandrin. But Nynaeve points out all the stuff that she has done for this future. And she's like, is it worth it? Like, is this all worth it? And I do like the way Liandrin looks at Nynaeve at that point. It just it says a lot. This is all being done well. I have hardly any complaints about this episode. Mainly because interesting things are actually happening. We see Liandrin coming out of the ways with all of the girls unconscious again, draped over horses. And she's meeting up with Lady Suroth and Lady Suroth's crew. And Lady Suroth is like, we expected you hours ago. And Liandrin's like, the ways are unpredictable. I was expecting to meet our master here himself. So this was the gift that Ishamael is giving to Lady Suroth. And it's like, this is going to be the thing that'll make all the suffering that you're going through worth it. I'm not 100% sure if I see how that is. Like, I would have liked to have seen that her giving this gift to Turok kind of buys her favor back in the court in some way. I don't know. But Lady Saroth is like, the master has more important things to do than play fetch with his dog. I like the way Leandrin's actress makes her lip tremble in anger, like she's holding it back. This is good. I like this actress. I think she's doing a pretty good job.
What you do to these women is an abomination. Perhaps the Shan-Chan should learn proper respect for the One Power.
On the contrary, we respect the One Power so much we don't believe that anyone should wield it by accident of birth. Our Suldam train for years to prove themselves worthy. They earn their right, unlike the Aes Sedai.
Well, you don't have to be a dick about it.
Wow.
I like this. I like that the bad guys, the dark friends, they are just out for themselves. They will go after each other, even though they know that they're all working for the Dark One. And that was really apparent in the beginning of book 2, when you had this secret meeting of a bunch of dark friends, and you're in the head of just the one, and he's like, oh, I can't wait to hear what the instructions are that the Dark One's going to give to the other dark friends, because whatever they get told to do, I can maybe use that to my advantage. And then he's frustrated that he can't hear anything, because he's like, well, now I can't use what I know of them to my advantage.
Our master's needs will change with time, you know.
And all Marath Damane will be leashed. Eventually. Perhaps I will be the one to place the collar around your lovely throat.
Oh, got a real chip on her shoulder, this one.
If I had to write an article about you, it would say that you're very negative.
Our master's needs will change. I'll remind you of it on the day you kneel to me.
This Lady Saroth, she has to be the superior one and let everybody know it. And since she can't really do that to High Lord Turok, she's going to do it to everybody else. But she did it to the High Lord Turok and got her nails clipped. Then she did it to Ishamael, and he's like, dude, I know why you made this oath. And so, yeah. And then she's about to have her ass kicked by Leandrin, sort of. Well, not really her ass kicked, but she's about to lose 2/3 of the gift that was just brought to her.
How many times have we done this kind of thing before?
A lot.
Well, we've done things. You know,
we do stuff like this all the time.
Yeah, what's it called?
And how often do they work out?
Well, come on.
It doesn't always. How often should it work out?
They both think that they know what's up, which to me just shows that they're both being manipulated like heavily, and we get to know it, but somehow they're not aware of it. And on her way back into the ways, Leandrin uses the One Power to discreetly cut the bindings on Nynaeve, which ends up being completely useless.
Bring them to me.
Do something. I can't.
The Damane are attacking them, and Egwene turns around at one point to shield them from one of these blasts that's being shot at them. And that puts her behind Nynaeve and Elaine. Nynaeve and Elaine emerge on the other side of this forest, and it suddenly occurs to Nynaeve that Egwene is not with them anymore. And we see that Egwene has been captured by one of the Damane. Next, we see Nynaeve and Elaine have arrived in this city, and Elaine recognizes that it's Falm in Tomen Head, and she's like, we are so far away from the White Tower, like thousands of miles.
Falm. That's where Leandrin said Perrin and Loyal were being taken. Come on, we've got to find a...
I don't know where she was planning to run. Like, she's just gonna run around the city. I don't like the way this scene plays out, because in the book, it was Nynaeve who was coming up with the smart ideas and like what to do, which would be appropriate for the woman who's older and the wisdom. But in this case, they've switched it. At least I'm pretty sure I remember it being the other way around. Now it's Elaine who's like, shut up. And they go off into an alley, and she explains to Nynaeve, don't draw any attention to us. They're going to be looking for us. We need to be careful. I mean, this is common sense. And Elaine points out these soldiers, these Shan-Chan, well, she doesn't know that they're called Shan-Chan, but she's like, they're not from Falm. Like, they're foreigners. Like, I don't know who these guys are. Like, obviously she's been here before, and she at least recognizes what soldiers from Tomen Head or Falm should look like. And Nynaeve is like, I don't care where they're from. Like, all I care about is getting Egwene back. Which, just a second ago, the thing that prompted her to go running into the city was actually that this is where Leandrin said that the boys were. So I thought she was running into the city to look for the boys. It's a bit choppy. Whatever. They duck away from some soldiers that are passing by, and Nynaeve, like, just walks off, and Elaine goes and catches her and is like, dude, you need to stop. You're gonna get us both killed.
First, we need to change our clothes. Our clothes? Not fancy enough for you.
I forgot. I'm talking to a complete idiot. You are so stupid.
Those soldiers at the Waygate were looking for us. They would still be looking for us.
I like her. She seems smart.
Follow me. I'm not taking orders from you, Princess. I don't even know you.
I mean, it would be obvious if you're trying to go undercover in a town. You can't go walking around in clothes that are going to be recognized. Like, even what they're wearing could be described to somebody and like, look for the two girls wearing white. Even if there was more reason for Nynaeve not to trust Elaine, why wouldn't you agree with her being in this situation? Clearly you're surrounded by enemies, unless you didn't pay any attention to the way the soldiers were dressed when, Leandrin was trying to hand you off to these new bad guys. Like, you didn't look and see like, oh, they're wearing the same armor as the soldiers in this town. So it's possible that they are looking for us. They just made her stupid. She was not this stupid in the book. I do remember that. Thankfully, a guy comes along and knocks them both out. The girls wake up in some sort of an apartment or something, and a lady and the guy who knocked them out come walking in, and Nynaeve's like, who are you? She introduces herself as Rima of the Yellow Aja, and she takes out her Aes Sedai ring as proof and says, my warder found you just in time. The High Lady Suroth has put out your descriptions, and the whole city is looking for you. And I love that Elaine side glances Nynaeve, like, told ya. And Rima goes, do you have any idea what these Shan-Chan do to women who can channel? And Nynaeve looks to Elaine like, does she know? They don't know. Neither of them know. But we find out in the very next scene, because it is the scene where High Lady Turoth is bringing Egwene to High Lord Turok as a sort of, I think it's a gift. This is one of the most powerful channelers that we've ever seen. And they're like, all right, collar her. She needs to be trained. And they put the collar on her. The lady comes over and puts the collar on Egwene and attaches a chain from Egwene's neck to her wrist. And it becomes clear that it is excruciating pain. She is totally under control, unable to fight against this. But this is what we got so far. I mean, I feel annoyed because I couldn't find problems with it that were so bad that I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to complain about this. I was kind of nitpicking through the whole thing. But at the same time, I had no investment in the stuff that was going on. And this comes back to that problem that I mentioned back in season 1, which is when things don't make sense logically, or you don't set things up right, the things that happen later on, you just won't care about them because you won't believe any of the things that are going on. In this case, they failed to invest me in a lot of the things that are happening with these particular characters. I don't like Moiraine. So the fact that she's acting nice here, I'm just relieved that she's not being a horrible person. That's not the same thing as actually liking her. I don't especially care about what's going on with Nynaeve, who's acting dumb. I am sad that Elaine is in this bad situation in this attic, like she can't get out of this place because the Shan-Chan could capture her. The characters carry this story, and I just don't have a whole lot of emotional investment in any of these characters. And that's something that has to be set up from the beginning and carried to here. I think Perrin would probably be he has the potential to be the most likable at this point outside of Elaine. I don't know. I really don't know. And do I care to figure it out? I really don't. So whatever. I pretty much just summarized the episode instead of actually commenting on it. I think I tried to point out a few differences between this and the book. This was an interesting time in the book. Like, the stuff that goes on with Egwene is interesting when she's, enslaved. But yeah, whatever, okay. I'm annoyed that all this stuff is going on and I just don't really care about it. But on its own, at least something was happening. At least I felt like we're making some interesting shifts in the plot, which it's an appropriate time to do that. We're at episode 5, so now they're making things happen. Now, I'm not sure if it was told to me in the comments or if it was in my Discord, but somebody said that I had the wrong impression about the Horn of Valere. I thought it was whoever blows this horn, they could summon the Heroes of Aegis to them and they will fight for them. So if the bad guys have it, they will go fight for the bad guys, which was very high stakes. You don't want these legendary heroes being summoned from the dead to go and fight for the bad guys. You want them to fight for the good guys. And that made it really important to go and get the horn. So was I wrong? Is it not the case? The only power that the horn has is to summon the heroes for the dragon. I think that might be the case. Remembering back to the conclusion of book 2 and the conversation that happened between the heroes and Rand and Matt and all those guys, it seems like they were only willing to fight for Rand and they needed the banner to be going up. I don't know. I think that's right. But then it makes me wonder, why did High Lord Turoth say, with this we will rule the world? Were they under the impression that they're the heroes or they're the good guys? So if they blow the horn, they will get the heroes. I don't know. Anyway, I don't care. Thankfully, there's no Lan, Matt, or Min in this episode, so I think we're done. We can just be done. I hope it wasn't a complete waste. Please like and subscribe, or if you're feeling really generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button down below. Be good to yourself.